The rain had been falling since dawn, soft, steady, and unrelenting. It painted the windows in streaks of gray light as I stood in the living room, holding the object that had outlived both love and grief, my husband's old leather briefcase. For 6 months, it had sat in the same spot beside his desk, untouched, unspoken of, a relic of a life I thought I understood. My name is Linda Reeves. I'm 68 years old, and until last week, I believed I had lived an ordinary life with an honest man. My husband, Robert Reeves, passed away from a sudden heart attack last spring. We had been married 42 years. He was quiet, polite, and devoted, the kind of man who kept his promises and expected others to do the same. But there was one promise I had made to him that I was about to break. It was on a cold evening in 1982 when he first brought that briefcase home. I remember how he placed it gently on the table, as if it contained something fragile, something sacred. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "Linda, if anything ever happens to me, don't let anyone throw this away." Back then, I thought it was a sentimental thing. Maybe old tax documents, family papers, or something tied to his work as an accountant. But even now, decades later, the weight of that promise still echoed in my mind like a secret I was never meant to question. So when my son Daniel came over that Saturday morning, holding trash bags and boxes, I felt my chest tighten before he even spoke. "Mom, it's time," he said gently. "You've been living in a museum. Dad's gone. You need to let some things go." His tone wasn't cruel, it was concerned, the voice of a son trying to save his mother from her own grief. He moved through the house like a careful tornado, collecting old clothes, cracked picture frames, books that hadn't been opened in years. I stood quietly and watched as pieces of my life disappeared into black bags. And then he reached for the briefcase. "Not that," I said quickly, stepping between him and the desk. Daniel froze. "Mom, it's falling apart. You can't keep holding on to junk." "Junk?" I whispered. "That's not junk. Your father asked me to keep it." He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Mom, please, it's been 6 months. Dad wouldn't want you living in the past. It's just an old briefcase." But he didn't understand. That briefcase wasn't just old leather and rusted metal clasps. It was a promise. And promises meant something to me. Still, I could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the frustration of watching me cling to something he believed was meaningless. So, I compromised. "All right," I said. "I'll take it out to the bin myself. Just give me a moment." He smiled faintly, relieved. "That's all I ask." He left to clean the garage, while I stood in the living room clutching the handle that had molded to Robert's hand over 4 decades. The leather was cracked, the edges torn, and when I lifted it, I felt the faint weight of its contents shift. Papers maybe, or something heavier. Outside, the wind had picked up, leaves scattered across the driveway as I walked toward the trash bin. I could almost hear Robert's voice again, deep, calm, reassuring. "Promise me you'll never throw it away." I paused at the bin, tears stinging my eyes. Maybe this was what grief looked like. Letting go of the little things so the big pain could finally fade. I took a deep breath and lifted the briefcase higher. And that's when it happened. The old leather split. The bottom tore open with a sharp rip that echoed like thunder in the empty yard. I gasped and dropped to my knees, trying to gather them before the wind carried them away. That's when I saw the first page that stopped my heart cold. It was an official-looking document, yellowed with age, stamped with a red seal I didn't recognize. At the top was a photograph of my husband, younger, sharper, wearing a suit and tie. But the name beneath it wasn't Robert Reeves. It was Robert Kingsley. My breath caught in my throat. Beneath the name were words I had never seen before. Top secret clearance, level 5. For a moment, everything around me went still. The rain stopped. The world stopped. All I could hear was the slow, heavy pounding of my own heart. I picked up another paper, then another. Each one was stranger than the last. Documents stamped confidential, eyes only, and property of the United States Intelligence Council. I blinked hard, trying to make sense of what I was holding. My husband was an accountant, wasn't he? He filed numbers, not national secrets. Daniel's voice broke through the storm. "Mom, are you okay out there?" But I couldn't answer, because in that moment I realized the man I had loved and trusted for over 4 decades might not have been who he said he was. And what I found in that torn briefcase was only the beginning of a secret my husband had hidden from me. A secret that someone, somewhere, had wanted to stay buried forever.
The driveway was scattered with papers, pages that didn't belong to any ordinary life. My hands shook as I picked them up one by one, the rain now mixing with tears on my cheeks. Each page told a story I was never meant to read. A government seal, a list of names, numbers that looked like coordinates. And then there it was again, Robert Kingsley, printed in bold at the top of several pages, followed by strings of military jargon and clearance codes that made no sense to me. Daniel came running out of the house. "Mom, what happened? Why are you—" He stopped mid-sentence when he saw the papers. His brow furrowed. "What is all this?" I could barely speak. These were inside the briefcase. Your father's briefcase. He crouched beside me, picking up a few of the damp sheets. I watched his eyes widen as he read the words, Operation Glass Shield. Classified. "Mom," he said slowly, "this looks like some kind of intelligence document, but Dad was an accountant. He wasn't in the military. This doesn't make sense." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to laugh it off, say it was some old fantasy, a coincidence, anything but what it looked like. But deep down, something inside me knew. The man I married had lived behind a wall of silence, and I had mistaken that silence for modesty. "Let's take these inside," Daniel said quietly. We spread the documents across the dining table. Under the bright kitchen light, the truth looked even more impossible. The papers weren't ordinary, they were official, crisp, printed with seals and marked "Eyes Only." One file had a black and white photograph of my husband, standing with a group of men in suits and uniforms. His expression was cold, professional, not the man who kissed my forehead before bed. Daniel looked at me. This can't be real. Maybe he worked as a consultant or something. But another sheet destroyed that fragile hope. It was labeled Confidential Directive, Agent Kingsley. The lines below read, Subject granted level 5 clearance, assigned to Domestic Counterintelligence Task Force. All actions classified, family contact restricted. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. Agent, what does that even mean? You think Dad was in intelligence? I whispered, I don't know. But I did. My heart already knew. The puzzle pieces started to form in my mind. The long nights, the sudden business trips, the way he sometimes stared out the window without speaking. I had asked him once if something was wrong, and he said, Not everything in life can be explained, Linda. Some things are better kept quiet. At the time, I thought he was talking about work stress. Now I realized it was something much larger and much darker. Daniel picked up one document and frowned. Look at this. It's signed with his handwriting, but the signature says R. Kingsley, not R. Reeves. He handed it to me. My husband's handwriting, clear, precise, unshakable, confirmed it. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't identity theft. This was him. The man I shared a bed with, the man I raised a family with, the man whose funeral I planned, had another name, another life. Daniel sank into a chair, rubbing his temples. I don't get it. Why would Dad hide this from us? Why would he have classified government files in his briefcase? I sat down opposite him, the papers trembling in my hands. Maybe because he wasn't supposed to talk about it. Maybe it was his job to keep it secret. Daniel's voice rose, frustrated. Then why keep the files? Why risk everything by bringing them home? I looked toward the hallway, where his jacket still hung, untouched. He told me once, I said quietly, that this briefcase held the most important part of his life. Maybe he meant this. Silence filled the room thick and heavy. The ticking of the old wall clock felt louder than ever. Then Daniel picked up a smaller folded sheet that had fallen to the floor. Mom, look at this. It was a letter, handwritten, dated nearly 30 years ago. The words were faint but readable. If anything happens to me, ensure the Reeves family is protected. Cole will know what to do. Cole? I repeated, my pulse quickening. Who's Cole? Daniel shrugged. No idea. There's no last name. I reached for the briefcase again, searching through the remaining pockets, and found something wedged deep inside the lining, a small black address book, edges frayed with age. Flipping through the pages, I found dozens of names and numbers, but one stood out. Harrison Cole. Next to it, in my husband's handwriting, were 3 words. If urgent, trusted. I stared at the name. Somehow, even written in faded ink, it felt alive, like the next step in a story that had only just begun. Daniel grabbed his laptop and typed the name into a search engine. Nothing. No social media, no business listings, not even a public record. It was as if this man didn't exist. He turned to me. Mom, this is seriously weird. Whoever this guy is, Dad trusted him enough to write his name here. Should we call the number? I hesitated, staring at the digits inked in blue. A part of me screamed that it was dangerous, that I was stepping into a world I wasn't meant to enter. But another part of me, the part that had spent 40 years loving a man who clearly lived 2 lives, whispered that I had no choice. Call it, I said finally. Daniel dialed the number. The phone barely rang once before a deep, calm voice answered. This line is restricted. Identify yourself. Daniel froze, staring at me in disbelief. I took the phone from his trembling hand and spoke softly. My name is Linda Reeves. I'm Robert Reeves' wife. A long silence followed. I could hear faint static, like the sound of old radio interference. Then the man's voice returned, slower this time. Mrs. Reeves? Where did you hear that name? I swallowed hard. From the papers, in his briefcase. I need answers, please. Another pause. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. Your husband prepared me for this call. Do not speak to anyone else. Do not leave your house. I'll be there within 2 hours. And just like that, he hung up. Daniel's face turned pale. Mom, what did he mean he's been waiting for this call? I looked down at the torn briefcase, the scattered secrets, the ghost of the man I thought I knew. Because in that moment, I understood something terrible. My husband hadn't just worked for the government. He had left behind a mission that wasn't finished. And now, somehow, we were part of it.
The clock on the wall ticked slower than usual that evening. Every second sounded like a countdown to something I didn't understand, yet couldn't stop. The rain had stopped, but thunder still echoed faintly in the distance. Daniel sat by the window, arms crossed, staring at the road. His phone was on the table, the call log still glowing with the number we had dialed. He said 2 hours. It's been 1 hour, 45 minutes. I was pacing the living room, clutching a photo of Robert in my hands, the one from our wedding day. His smile looked so real, so ordinary. But now I couldn't tell where the lie began and the truth ended. When the knock finally came, it was firm, controlled. Like someone who didn't just visit homes, they entered them. Daniel tensed. "Mom, don't open it." But I was already walking toward the door. Something inside me, maybe instinct, maybe desperation, told me this was the only way to find closure. I opened the door slowly. A tall man stood there, gray hair neatly combed back, black coat dripping from the rain. His eyes, calm but piercing, scanned me with unsettling precision. "Mrs. Reeves," he said softly. "I'm Harrison Cole." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. His presence filled the room like a cold draft, quiet, but powerful. Daniel stepped forward. "Who are you really? You said my dad prepared you for this call. What does that mean?" Cole removed his gloves, folded them carefully, and set them on the table. "It means your father trusted me with something he didn't want to die with." He opened his briefcase, smaller, sleeker than Robert's, and pulled out a sealed envelope. The handwriting on the front made my heart jolt. It was Robert's. The same neat, deliberate handwriting that once wrote grocery lists and birthday cards. "To my dearest Linda, open only when the past refuses to stay buried." I whispered, "That's his writing." Cole nodded. "He left it with me years ago, said there might come a time when you'd need to understand everything." My hands trembled as I broke the seal. Inside was a letter, several pages long, written in Robert's voice, every word soaked in the weight of truth. "My dearest Linda, if you're reading this, it means I didn't make it back. You've probably discovered things I swore I'd take to the grave. I never wanted this life to touch you or Daniel, but choices made long ago can't be undone." I looked up at Cole. "What is this? What was he hiding from us?" He sighed, leaning against the wall. "Your husband wasn't an accountant. That was the cover story. He was an intelligence operative for a classified branch within the Department of Defense, something that officially doesn't exist." Daniel blinked. "You're saying my dad was a spy?" Cole's expression didn't change. "He was an investigator. He infiltrated groups that threatened national security, but something went wrong in his final mission. He uncovered corruption inside his own agency, people selling classified data to foreign powers. When he tried to expose it, they erased him." I felt my knees weaken. Erased him? Cole nodded solemnly. "They shut down his identity, changed his records, gave him a new name, Robert Reeves, and a civilian life. The briefcase was the only link left to who he truly was." I clutched the letter tighter, scanning the next lines. "If they ever find you, Linda, trust only Harrison. He knows what must be done. Everything in the briefcase, the names, the files, is evidence, and one of those names is still active. One of them was my friend and my betrayer." The words blurred as tears welled in my eyes. Daniel stepped closer to Cole. "So what now? Why tell us this after he's gone?" Cole looked at him gravely. "Because someone else knows you found the briefcase." The room fell silent. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed to vanish. Daniel's voice cracked. "What are you saying?" Cole looked toward the window. "We've been monitored since the call. Your father's old network wasn't fully dismantled. If that briefcase is open, someone will come looking for it." I could feel the fear crawling under my skin. "You mean we're in danger?" Cole nodded once. "Yes, but Robert planned for this. There's a safe house not far from here, his last standing contact point. He wanted you to go there if anything ever resurfaced." Daniel shook his head. "This is insane. My dad was just a normal man. We had backyard barbecues and movie nights." Cole interrupted sharply. "And that's exactly what he wanted you to remember him as. Normal, ordinary, hidden." I looked back down at the letter. The final paragraph sent chills through my spine. "If I'm gone, it means I failed to stop what was coming. But if Linda finds the briefcase, it means the truth is trying to reach the light. Follow the clues. Trust no one from my past, except Cole." My vision blurred. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, my husband, our quiet suburban years had shattered like glass. Cole glanced at his watch. "We don't have much time. You need to pack a few essentials. We'll leave tonight." Daniel's jaw clenched. "You expect us to just run away with a stranger?" Cole's gaze hardened. "Not with a stranger, with the only person standing between you and the people who erased your father's name." He walked toward the door and peeked outside. His voice dropped lower. "They're faster than I thought. We have to move, now." The headlights of a car flashed briefly outside the window, a black sedan idling just beyond the trees. Daniel whispered, "Mom, someone's out there." Cole turned to me. "Do exactly as I say, Mrs. Reeves. Get the briefcase." My pulse thundered in my ears. I grabbed the briefcase from the table, clutching it to my chest like it was my last connection to Robert, to the life I thought I knew. As Cole opened the back door, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed from the front porch. Heavy, deliberate. Like someone who didn't just visit homes, they entered them. Daniel tensed. "Mom, who are they?" Cole looked over his shoulder, eyes sharp as steel. "They're the ones your husband spent his life trying to stop." And in that instant, I realized this wasn't just about secrets anymore. It was about survival. Cole motioned for us to move. As we slipped into the night, the first gunshot shattered the front window.
The night was endless. The rain had returned, whispering against the car windows as we sped through narrow, forest-lined roads. Daniel drove, knuckles white on the steering wheel, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror every few seconds. Cole sat beside him, calm but alert, his hand never straying far from the small weapon tucked in his coat. I sat in the back seat, clutching Robert's briefcase to my chest. It wasn't just an object anymore. It was a heartbeat, a relic of everything we never knew about him, pulsing with answers I was both desperate and terrified to uncover. "Where are we even going?" Daniel asked, voice sharp from fear. Cole's gaze stayed forward. "An old cabin near the state line. Your father used it as a dead-drop location. No power, no phone signal. Safe." "Safe?" Daniel snapped. "We were shot at, Mr. Cole. I don't think anything about this is safe." Cole didn't answer. The silence said enough. The wipers squeaked rhythmically, clearing the rain in tired motions. My reflection in the window looked foreign. The tired eyes of a woman who just discovered her husband had lived an entirely different life. Robert had been a mystery even in the little things. Late nights at work, quiet moods, a locked drawer in his study. I had dismissed them all as stress, as marriage quirks. But now every piece of our past felt like a code waiting to be deciphered. We reached the cabin just before dawn. The sky was a dull gray, the air heavy with mist. Cole checked the perimeter first, then signaled us in. The place was small, dust settling on every surface.
but it had the eerie order of a place once used by men who didn't leave traces. I sat down at an old wooden table, setting the briefcase in front of me. My fingers hovered over the latches. Cole spoke quietly. Before you open it, you should know what's inside might not be easy to accept. I've already lost everything I thought was true, I said. What more is there to lose? He gave a short nod. Then, go ahead. The latches clicked open. The smell of old leather and paper filled the air. Inside, neatly stacked files and faded photos rested in careful order. Some were marked with coded letters. Others bore the faces of men I'd never seen before. One folder was labeled Project Meridian. Cole stiffened slightly when I lifted it. That's the one. Inside were classified documents, reports stamped with official seals, correspondence between unnamed officials, and one photo that made my breath stop. It was a picture of Robert, but not the Robert I knew. He was younger, wearing a military uniform, standing beside a man with a cold, calculating expression. The caption on the back read, Agent Reeves and Director Callan, 1989. Daniel frowned. Who's Callan? Cole's jaw tightened. Your father's mentor, and the man who betrayed him. The pieces started to click together. The paranoia, the secrecy, the locked drawers. Robert knew someone was watching him, even after retirement. Callan sold information, Cole explained. He used your father's access to transfer encrypted data, national defense files. When your husband uncovered it, he was marked for elimination. But he went off-grid, erased himself and lived out the rest of his days as Robert Reeves. He thought he was free. I whispered, until the past came back. Cole nodded. Until now. Daniel stood abruptly, pacing. So all this, these files, the shooting, you showing up, it's because of him, this Callan guy? Cole hesitated, then said softly, It's more complicated than that. Callan disappeared years ago. Everyone thought he was dead. He paused, eyes narrowing slightly. But the way they found you tonight, someone fed your address. Someone who knew about the briefcase. The air went cold. I looked at Cole, the suspicion rising in my chest. You knew about it too. For the first time, his expression cracked. Just a flicker, but enough. Daniel stepped between us. Mom, what are you saying? I'm saying, I whispered, that maybe the man your father trusted was the same man who betrayed him. Cole's voice dropped an octave. Be careful with your accusations, Mrs. Reeves. But I didn't back down. Robert left you that letter. You delivered it conveniently right after we opened the briefcase. You led us straight here, and you said we were being followed, but maybe you were leading them. Cole's gaze hardened. You think I want you dead? I took a step closer. I think you want what's inside this briefcase. The air between us crackled with tension. Cole's hand inched toward his coat pocket. Daniel froze, realizing what was about to happen. Don't, he said firmly. But before anyone could move, the faint crunch of gravel outside cut through the silence. Someone was approaching. Cole's eyes darted to the window. They're here. He moved fast, flipping the table for cover, his voice sharp. Take the files and get to the back door, now. Daniel grabbed my arm. Mom, come on. I clutched the briefcase and ran toward the back, heart hammering. Behind me, I heard Cole pull his weapon and fire once. Then another shot echoed, closer this time, and the sound of glass shattering filled the cabin. Daniel opened the rear door, but just as we stepped outside, a familiar voice froze me in my tracks. Well, he said calmly, stepping from the shadows, I see you found it. He was older now, gray at the temples, his face lined by time, but I recognized him instantly. From the photo. Director Callan, I whispered. He smiled thinly.
Your husband was a good man, loyal, but loyalty can be inconvenient. Daniel stepped protectively in front of me. You ruined his life. Callan's eyes flicked toward me. He made his choice, and so did I. And now, Mrs. Reeves, you have something that belongs to me. Cole burst through the door behind us, gun raised. Don't you move. Callan turned slowly, smirking. Ah, Cole, still cleaning up the mess you made, I see? My breath caught. Mess you made? What does he mean? Cole didn't answer. His face was pale, conflicted. Callan chuckled. You didn't tell her, did you? That it was you who brought me her husband's files 25 years ago? That you helped fake his death? I looked at Cole, disbelief flooding my chest. That's not true. But his silence said it was. Tears stung my eyes. You betrayed him. Cole's jaw clenched. I was ordered to. I tried to protect him afterwards. Callan raised his gun. And you failed. Before I could react, the sound of another gunshot ripped through the air, this one louder, closer, final. Callan staggered, eyes wide, before collapsing to the ground. Smoke curled from the barrel of Cole's gun. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Cole lowered his weapon, breathing hard. It's over, he said quietly. He's gone. But as I looked down at the fallen man, a cold realization settled in my heart. It wasn't over. Not yet. Because the briefcase was still open. And inside, a second envelope lay hidden beneath the files. It was addressed to me, in Robert's handwriting.
The world seemed to stop. Rain still whispered through the trees, a steady rhythm against the silence that followed the gunshot. Smoke curled in thin ribbons from Cole's gun, mixing with the faint smell of wet earth and burning fear. Callan lay motionless on the ground, his coat darkened by mud and blood. The forest was eerily quiet now, like even nature had paused to witness what had just unfolded. Daniel stood frozen, his chest rising and falling too fast. I held the briefcase to my heart, trembling not from cold, but from everything that had just shattered inside me. Robert had been right. The past had come back. But what haunted me most was the envelope I now held. Thin, yellowed, my husband's handwriting across it steady and precise. To Linda. If you've made it this far, you deserve to know the truth. I sank onto a nearby log, hands shaking as I tore it open. Inside was a single folded letter and a small photo, one I had never seen before. It was Robert, younger, standing beside a woman I didn't recognize, holding a baby. My breath caught. Daniel knelt beside me. Mom, who is that? I couldn't answer. My eyes blurred as I began to read. My dearest Linda, if you're holding this letter, it means the storm has reached you too. I never wanted it to. You were the only pure part of my life, the only truth I ever knew. But the world I lived in before you was full of shadows, and in those shadows, I made mistakes. I swallowed hard, reading the next lines aloud. Before I met you, I was deep in the Meridian operation. I was tasked with protecting a woman, a foreign informant named Elisa. She was brilliant, brave, and already in danger when I found her. But the mission blurred into something personal. When she gave birth to a child, she named me as the father. It wasn't true, but the lie protected her, and I let it stand. I stopped. The letter shook in my hands. Daniel whispered, He had another life? I shook my head slowly. No, he didn't. He covered for someone. He was trying to save them. I kept reading, voice trembling. Years later, Elisa disappeared, and I thought she was gone forever. When Callan betrayed us, I burned every bridge that tied me to that world, but I couldn't burn my conscience. Inside that briefcase, there's a birth certificate, a letter, and a key. The child grew up under another name, but now, as an adult, she's in danger. Callan was after her, not me. If she's still alive, find her, Linda. Protect her. She's innocent, and she's part of the truth I could never tell you. A gust of wind swept through the trees, scattering raindrops across the letter. I blinked them away, my heart racing. Daniel leaned closer. Mom, he wanted you to find her? To protect her? Cole crouched nearby, blood still spattered on his sleeve. His face was pale, but his eyes were steady. That's why Callan came for you. He thought the girl's identity was in that briefcase. I looked down at the open case again. Beneath the letter were more documents, photos, an address, even a map marked with a red circle near a small coastal town. And there, clipped to the corner of one page, was a name. Elisa's daughter, Rachel Carter. I traced the name with my fingertips. Somewhere out there, a young woman was living a life she didn't know was connected to mine, to Robert's legacy. Cole spoke quietly. You can still finish what he started. For a long moment, none of us spoke. The rain softened, the dawn light slowly bleeding into the forest, casting everything in silver and blue. I folded Robert's letter carefully and placed it back in the envelope. He never stopped protecting people, I whispered, even after death. Daniel touched my shoulder. What are we going to do, Mom? I looked toward the horizon, toward the life I had yet to face. We're going to find her, I said, and tell her who he really was. Cole stood silently, eyes lowered. You'll need help. I still have contacts. I met his gaze. You betrayed him once, Cole. Don't betray his memory now. He nodded, guilt flickering across his face. I won't. You have my word. We spent the rest of the morning burying Callan near the tree line, unmarked. No grave, no trace, just silence. The forest swallowed him whole. When it was done, I sat on the cabin steps, watching the first rays of sun break through the clouds. It felt like the first time I could breathe in days. Daniel came beside me, his voice soft. Do you think Dad ever wanted us to know all this? I smiled sadly. He wanted us to remember him as we did, but he also wanted us to see the truth eventually. Not as the man the world made him, but as the man he chose to be. I opened the briefcase one last time, feeling the cool metal against my palms. Inside was one final item I hadn't noticed before. A small, silver ring with the initials LR engraved inside. Robert's ring. I slipped it on my finger and whispered, You kept your promise, love. Now it's my turn. Cole loaded the car with the documents, the air between us no longer heavy with suspicion, but with something close to understanding. As we pulled away from the cabin, the briefcase sat beside me on the seat, open, lighter now, but still sacred. The past no longer felt like a chain. It felt like a compass. The road wound endlessly ahead, the forest thinning into light. Somewhere out there, a woman named Rachel Carter would soon learn who her father really was and the legacy he died to protect. And for the first time in years, I felt a strange, peaceful certainty settle over me. Robert wasn't gone. He had simply passed the mission on to me,